Hey, welcome into Dom Time. It's time for the weekly roundup. We bring in a pretty diverse group of pundits and we talk about the issues of the day. I don't know, wherever I look this week, all the issues of the day, at least a number of them, are landing on big drug issues. Eric Holder deciding, in devil's in the details, that there would be less of a mandatory minimum for those convicted, in his words, of lesser drug crimes. Breaking Bad, any excuse to talk about it tonight. We'll do that, where a crystal meth dealer is one of the biggest anti-heroes of the last 20 years. We'll see if we can define that. An array of other issues with our two guests tonight. Back with us on my far left is Andy Hatchadarian. Andy is the editor of the Daily Local News out in Westchester, where they have two teams apparently making their way to big-time stuff in baseball.
We're hoping. Our Lineville Little League team, I think they had a tough weekend, but we also have our Kennett senior leaguers who are in the World Series up in Bangor, Maine.
Something's in the water out there.
I hope so.
We know something's in the water at Philadelphia Magazine. With us is Nick Vidala. Nick is the assistant web editor of Philadelphia Magazine, and we've hit the jackpot because Nick writes primarily about millennial generation issues, including drug and marijuana legalization / culture / et cetera.
Yeah, whatever.
So let me ask you, with Eric Holder doing this, though, is that a step in the right direction, or as I see it, is it as a step that gets some sense of, well, we've arrived at this, there will be a lack of penalty, but we're not going to legalize marijuana anytime soon?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think that we can go ahead and just legalize marijuana. That's just not politically viable. But definitely kind of moving it toward a position where we're not persecuting people for simple possession unnecessarily.
You think that's happening in a place like Philadelphia? We'll talk about Chester County in a moment.
What
would happen in Philadelphia? Come on.
In Philadelphia, we do, I mean...
You'd have to have a trunk load, and it'd have to be a pretty big trunk, right?
A trunk load. No, I mean, well, if you do look at smoke down prohibition, do you know about this?
No.
So what's been going on lately in Philadelphia, about once a month, there's been a comedy / activism group that's been organizing at the Liberty Bell Independence Hall.
I know over that, yeah.
Okay, so
right.
what they're doing is they're gathering to kind of talk about legalization. Then at a predefined point, they all smoke a joint. Mm-hmm. And so what's been happening is, in the earlier ones, they were kind of left alone. And as they've kept going, Park Service has been called in, more federal organizations.
And what do they do with them?
They go ahead and then well, in Philadelphia, it's more or less decriminalized, but they get cited for $200. They get to take a drug class, that kind of thing.
Do they do it?
Yes. Yeah, they do.
They do?
Yeah, well, I mean,
surprising.
it's far better than going to prison. No?
Okay, yeah. I was unaware there's a penalty. I have to get you on the radio and talk about this.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And out in Chester County.
We have an interesting situation.
Westchester.
Well, in Westchester, I mean, let's face it, we have the university, so you're talking about a whole group of 18.
Is it decriminalized?
18. Well, no. I mean, they're still arresting people, and then we also have the rural part of it where the state police have gone, airplanes or whatever. They're looking at how they're using the technology, but they're arresting people for growing, dozens and dozens and dozens of plants. So I mean, we do have. It's an interesting sort of situation there between a college and then the rural growth, if you want to call it that.
Chester County's responsible. We should bomb Chester County. No. Philadelphia wouldn't have any of these problems, so we should spray over vast areas of Chester County.
Just don't hurt the wineries and the corn and the mushrooms, please.
Okay. Now, the other drug story, and I think Nick is a fan, and you may have had familiarity with the show about 3 or 4 years ago. Breaking Bad, I just saw as genius, mainly because I talked with Vince Gilligan, who is the creator of this universe, and he said there is accountability for everybody in this. You don't get out of here with whatever crimes you commit. And that's part of the driving force. But what do you make of the fact that people still like Walter White, the main character, the anti-hero, a guy who's a chemistry teacher, gets cancer, may be back again in this week's edition, and decides to sell crystal meth because he's a chemist?
Well, I think what kind of attracts people to Walter White really is that he is kind of facing, as a character, he's facing a lot of things that people do face every day. You know, there is illness in the world. There is, kind of trouble with money, economy troubles, things like that.
Right.
And this is kind of a story of a man who's stopping at nothing to try to provide something for his family, or at least it was earlier in the seasons, and then kind of got taken over by the egomania. Yeah, he wanted the empire, exactly. And I think so. There's the element that he is kind of like the everyman that just kind of snaps.
The NEA has
existentially.
not weighed in on it, or the NJEA, although he's striking a blow for teachers out there not being compensated. But did you know, Andy, and I know you
I'm
may
not
have
really
passed it-
familiar with the show that much,
Okay.
but it sounds to me a little on the lines of sort of the anti-hero Dexters and the folks
Dexter,
from,
yeah,
you know,
Tony Soprano. Tony Soprano
Sure.
had a huge amount of popularity.
I mean, he was the guy you always rooted for, even though he was probably one of the worst human
Yep.
beings when it came down to the crimes he committed and the way he treated his fellow man. But I mean,
Yeah.
we all sort of, I mean, look, when you know, when our favorite actor died, I mean, we all were in mourning.
Well,
for the
I'm
guy
in
who-
mourning.
yeah.
Tell me if you guys can think on your feet here. What's the next big show that our viewers tonight should take a look at? The Office is going on. It went under a year and a half, 2 years ago, with Steve Carell going by. So I don't have that anymore. Breaking Bad only have 7 left. And
Painful.
seeing last night, it's painful to see the stuff that they're doing and the brilliance of it still continuing. Let's convince them to do 2 or 3 more years. So what do you recommend?
I would have to say Netflix is doing a series called Orange is the New Black right now.
Okay.
Same producers from Weeds. It's about a woman who goes to
Right.
prison, you know, for drug charges, similar kind of thing.
By the way, particular thing, maybe use this as a headline, maybe you have. Marijuana is the new gay marriage.
That's probably a pretty good slogan.
Okay. And Andy?
I guess we'd have to be partial to like Newsroom or something being in our business of delivering
Right.
the news. But I haven't followed all that many of the new shows. Netflix, I know my kids are always on trying to introduce me to the new shows, but I'm always way behind. I was way behind The Sopranos. The only show I started out with and kept current was The Wire, of
But
course.
see, this is the great thing with binge viewing.
Absolutely.
You can catch
Yeah.
up. I know people that are binging across the country this week. They're only in season 3, and they're determined by Sunday to catch up to Breaking Bad.
And I've done that. That's how I did it with The Sopranos. We spent hours and hours catching up.
All right, if marijuana is the new gay marriage, out of Montgomery County, a milestone was reached, and gay marriage is the new gay marriage. We'll talk about that next with our pundits here as Dom Time continues.